The summer heat hung thick over the quiet suburban neighborhood as Michael Dawson sat behind the wheel of the black SUV parked in the long circular driveway of the Dawson estate. He had been working as a driver for over 6 years now, mostly handling corporate executives and wealthy families who needed someone reliable, discreet, and professional. Michael fit that role perfectly. Quiet, respectful, and never stepping outside the invisible line that separated employer from employee. But everything began to change the moment Claire Dawson started noticing him. Claire was the wife of Richard Dawson, the owner of Dawson & Company, a successful logistics company that seemed to grow every year. Richard was a man always chasing meetings, flights, and deals. He was rarely home before midnight and often gone for days at a time. Claire, on the other hand, had a life that looked perfect from the outside. She had the big house, the parties, the country club membership, and all the luxuries anyone could ask for. Yet inside she was lonely. Michael first noticed it in her eyes. The way she would pause when she got into the car, looking at him a little longer than necessary before asking him how his day was. Unlike Richard, who never bothered with pleasantries, Claire would start conversations. She asked about his childhood, his favorite music, his dreams beyond being a driver. She laughed at his jokes, and she shared small secrets about her life, things she said she couldn't tell anyone else. One evening in early June, Michael had been asked to pick Claire up from a charity gala. Richard was supposed to attend, but as always, a business call overseas kept him away. When Claire slid into the back seat, her perfume filled the air, and her silk dress shimmered under the streetlights. She seemed distant that night, her smile faint and her voice softer than usual. "Rough night?" Michael asked carefully, keeping his eyes on the road. Claire sighed, leaning back against the seat. "I think I'm just tired of pretending everything's perfect." Michael didn't respond at first. He wasn't sure if she wanted comfort or just someone to listen. After a pause, he said, "Sometimes it helps to stop pretending, at least for a little while." She glanced at him through the rearview mirror, her eyes holding his. It was the kind of look that lingered, that carried more than words could say. From that night forward, things shifted between them. Claire began requesting Michael personally for her errands, her outings, her evening rides. She confided in him more deeply each time, telling him about her loneliness, her feeling invisible in her own marriage, and how she just wanted to feel alive again. Michael tried to keep his boundaries, but he was only human. The more time they spent together, the harder it became to deny the unspoken energy growing between them. One late evening, after dropping her off from a dinner with friends, Claire surprised him by asking, "Do you ever get tired of driving everyone else around, Michael? Always watching life happen in the rearview mirror instead of living it yourself?" Michael chuckled lightly, though her words struck something inside him. "Sometimes. But I've learned that quiet moments, even in the background, can mean more than people realize." Claire smiled, leaning slightly closer from the back seat. Her voice softened. "Maybe you deserve more than the background." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken feelings. Michael swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel tighter, trying to remain composed. When she finally stepped out of the car that night, she touched his arm gently before leaving, and it sent a wave of warmth through him that stayed long after she disappeared inside the house. Their connection deepened in small ways. An extra minute of conversation in the driveway, a secret smile exchanged when no one else was watching, the occasional brush of her hand against his. Michael tried to convince himself that he was imagining it, that Claire was just being kind, but deep down he knew the truth. The night everything changed came unexpectedly. Richard was out of town on a business trip, and Claire had asked Michael to drive her to a late dinner with her sister. After dropping her off, he waited outside in the car, reading on his phone. Hours later she returned, slipping into the passenger seat instead of the back. "Can we take the long way home?" she asked softly. Michael nodded, and they drove through the quiet streets, the city lights glowing in the distance. She rolled down the window slightly, letting the warm night air rush in, her hair catching the breeze. After a while, Claire turned to him. "Michael, do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like the one you really want is just out of reach. Michael hesitated, then answered honestly. Every day. She looked at him then, really looked, and the weight of her gaze made his chest tighten. Before he could say another word, she reached out and placed her hand over his. The gesture was simple, but it carried 1,000 unspoken promises. From that moment on, their nights were never the same. Whenever Richard was away, Claire would find quiet excuses to be with Michael. Sometimes it was as innocent as sitting in the parked car outside the estate, talking until the early hours of the morning. Other times it was more. Small touches that grew into something they couldn't resist. They were careful, always careful, never crossing the line where the world could catch them. But in those hours they shared, they found something that felt more real than the lives they were pretending to live. Michael knew it was dangerous. He knew that if anyone found out, the consequences could ruin them both. But he also knew he had never felt this alive. Claire, for her part, seemed to glow more with each passing night. She laughed more, she smiled more, and she often told him that he was the reason she felt seen again. One night, as they sat together in the quiet of the driveway, Claire whispered, "I don't know what the future looks like, Michael. But I know I don't want to give this up." Michael took her hand gently, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Whatever this is, Claire, it's ours. And that's enough for me." Their secret nights continued, tucked away in the shadows of a life that looked perfect from the outside. To the world, Claire was the boss's wife, living the dream of wealth and privilege. To Michael, she was a woman who needed someone to see her, to hear her, to hold her heart when it felt too heavy. And in return, she gave him something he hadn't felt in years: purpose, belonging, and love, even if it had to remain hidden. The story of Claire and Michael was never meant for the public eye. It wasn't the kind of romance written in fairy tales or celebrated in the open. But in the quiet, in the stolen glances and late-night drives, they found a truth they both craved. Sometimes love doesn't follow rules. Sometimes it only asks for two people brave enough to claim it, even if only in secret nights.